Audio check one. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Dorothy Bell. I'm the program manager for the Budget Line of Business. So welcome. Thank you all for getting here this morning and registering early. Appreciate that. In the meantime, we want to get started with some networking and some social hour, and there's some food in the cafeteria for you. So if you haven't picked up anything yet, so feel free. You can exit right here to my right. You'll lead down to the cafeteria where we have photo opportunities. You can take your Budget Line of Business selfie. We have Connect tech support in there as well as some foods. There's some apple and banana muffins in there if you'd like some. So, but feel free. We will get started on or about 9:30, so we have some time to mix and mingle. You will be receiving a envelope, and so this is the game for today, the networking game. We're gonna play Money Talks, and you'll get instructions on how to navigate that game. So everyone will get $4 Budget Line of Business bucks. Okay, you'll see that in your envelope. And what I want you to do is to fill it out: first name, last name, email. And there's a few questions on there that you can answer, just generic, what about you kind of thing. And then you're going to exchange it with people that you talk to throughout the day. So by the end of the day, you should not have your dollars in your envelope. You should have 4 other individual dollars in there, so that way you've mixed and mingled and networked with other people. So Money Talks. Make sure that you remind yourself throughout the day that we will, exchange the dollar figure. And the prize at the end, anybody who has the highest dollar value, and let me intercept that. Volunteers will have extra envelopes for overachievers that want to do a little bit more, and you'll get extra $4 bucks. So, the intent is to meet as many people today as you can. So whoever has the highest dollar value at the end of the day will receive a prize. So Money Talks, let's get it going, okay? And like I said, the exit here to my right, we will have a few greeters, I think, meet us on the right-hand side to lead them to the cafeteria. Restrooms, just to kind of make a quick announcement for those who haven't been into the building before. To my left, far left, you will go to the glass doors. The female restrooms on the right-hand side, the males are on the right. Okay? All righty. Welcome. I'm excited to see you all. Good morning. Welcome again. Thank you for coming. Just again, want to let you know that we do have a social room set up in the cafeteria. Also, the cafeteria, if you're hungry and you want some proteins, the cafeteria has that, as well as Starbucks coffee. And if you would go and take your photo op and have fun with that, but you'll be able to do it throughout the day. Thank you. All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. If I can get everyone's attention and we can have a seat to get started this morning. How's everyone doing this morning? Great. Okay, good. Happy Tuesday to you. All right. So, welcome to the 2024 Fall Expo. This is our first in-person since 2017, so we are excited to be here. And we're happy for you all to be here. So, round of applause, round of applause, round of applause. I'm Dorothy Bell. I am the program manager for the Budget Line of Business, and I have Janice Butler, the senior advisor here with Budget Line of Business. You're familiar with her on the trainings, the budget chats, yes, the forums. Also, the training working group, she led that for us this past year. So, Janice Butler.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming.
And then we have Aisha Sharush, and we have her as our project manager, marketing communication specialist, and CDC lead. Awesome. So we welcome you all this morning. We have been planning this event since probably early July. We realized that we needed it in person as things started to open back up, and have been really excited. We are brand new to the program management office since 2022. We came in right before the transition and had a lot to do, right, in the course of 2 years. And also the help of you all, we have really acquired a lot of great network and information about the Budget Line of Business. And so we are excited about having a network opportunity today. So that is kind of the gear to bringing us together. We heard from the surveys that you all were interested in connecting with one another again, understanding the community, and also just kind of being in the space to understand what's the next step for budget in the years to come. So we will go over some of that today. We will also go through a demo of the QFRs, and we're going to shift the schedule just a little bit because there are a few scheduling changes that we're going to shift, and I'll note that. A couple of housekeeping. You all have the Money Talks envelope game, okay? And I think some of you all have exchanged, which I've seen, and thank you for that. The concept of the game is to exchange all of your Budget Line of Business bucks by the end of the day, right? So everybody starts off with $4, and then you should be able to interchange and meet at least 4 people today, at least. And then also, we have other volunteers that have extra envelopes. So anybody who's an overachiever and want a little bit more, challenge, you feel free to grab another envelope, and that entices you to go meet with other people. Now, that doesn't stop you from talking to everybody in the room, right? But at the same time, the concept of the game is to meet, mix and mingle, and understand your budget community. So with that being said, QR code on the back of picked up the wrong ID. On the back of your ID badge, you can scan that, and that has the agenda. So we will be shifting a little bit this morning. We were going to start with the OMB talk with Dave Rowe and discuss some of the transition expectations and some of the guidance from OMB. We're going to shift that and do the USDA Connect demo, the QFR demo at first. And then we'll take a small break, a mini break, and then we will go from there to our Budget Line of Business partner panel if Dave isn't in person at that moment in time. So we will shift, but at the present time, we will go through the QFR, and we will have Dane in. Are they left, right? Oh, they're coming through that way. Okay. All right. Sounds good. And then also just, again, housekeeping, restrooms. Ladies' restroom is to my left, right before the glass doors. Male restroom is to my right before the glass doors. And then also in the cafeteria, what we call our social room, you can take your Budget Line of Business selfie. Please do, and tag yourself. We're going to put the album together and send it to everybody, and we'll be able to experience the moment after the event. Oh, awesome. Okay. The man of the hour. All right, so we just started.
Okay. Sounds good. We're happy to see you.
Awesome.
Good to see
you. So we're gonna we'll change it. Yeah, that works. Perfect. Awesome. So just to speak to that, the social room. So you can take the your Budget Line of Business selfie. There's also a few desserts. There's apple and banana muffins in there, as well as waters. You can meet with some of the USDA Connect staff. There's a table there, and they can discuss any type of technical inquiry that you have or interest for your agency. Feel free. We definitely want to start that technical conversation for 25. So any questions or interest that you have, this is a good time to have that discussion. Next, we have the AABPA represented, so feel free to talk with them. Andy Pavard is here. I'm the president for the AABPA. You can stand right here. Yep, there we are. There's Andy Pavard. And so feel free to inquire about the association and kind of membership there. We also have a career development corner where we're going to kind of go through like emotional intelligence, kind of where you are in your professional career kind of thing. And we want to kind of get your insight there. As you well know, we do our CDCs monthly. And so if you do have any interest in doing any type of topic, whether it's related to budget and or mindfulness or professional development, feel free to sign up for the 25 calendar year. We are scheduling those sessions this year. And then last but not least, we have the training working group that is newly established November of last year officially. And then we have our co-leads officially this March. And they have come together to enhance the curriculum, the budget line of business training curriculum. So we know that we have our scheme of trainings that we have available, but we want to enhance that, have more application, also some more group engagement to better understand the processes and the products that we are producing in the budget space. So with that being said, I think I covered all bases. If not, feel free, come and talk to me, any of my team members and also the volunteers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because without you all, we would not be here today. So I do want to give everyone a round of applause for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Awesome. All right, so we will get started. And I'm going to introduce Mr. Dave Rowe. Dave Rowe is the Deputy Assistant Director for the Budget Review Division. Dave is the Deputy Assistant Director for the Budget and OMB's Budget Review Division. He started his OMB career in 1996 as a graduate student intern in the education branch. He joined OMB full-time in 1997 as a program examiner, first in the health division and then in the education branch. He became the education branch chief in 2005 and the Deputy Assistant Director for Budget in 2010. David received his Bachelor of Arts in History from the University of Michigan and his Master of Public Policy from Duke University Stanford Institute of Public Policy. And with that, I welcome Dave Rowe. Thank you.
So I used to work on education policy in the education branch at OMB, and I haven't been back here for a while. And this is, I think, the first time I've seen this conference room renovated. It's really nice. You can't hear me. Whoa, there we go. Is this better? Okay. I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces as I'm looking around here. So I'm Dave Rowe. I'm the deputy in the Budget Review Division at OMB. You might see like my names a lot of times. Anytime like a budget data request kind of goes out to agencies, whether I'm the one who wrote it or not, it is usually sort of coming from under my name. I've definitely seen and reviewed it. So you either, have positive or negative thoughts kind of when you see my name when that comes out. But it's great to see everyone. It's great this is in person. It's hard to do like kind of a presentation in front of like a computer screen with a lot of like kind of blank screens or sort of people with their cameras off. So it's good to see folks here. Few things just kind of at the top. One, there's obviously lots of questions and lots of sort of like things that folks are wondering kind of going into sort of this upcoming transition. A lot of those questions I can't answer, obviously, but what I can sort of talk about is sort of the budget process and kind of what to expect when it comes to the budget during a transition. Two, this is all informed speculation at this point, right? Like I have not talked to anybody on the incoming administration's transition team. I don't know exactly what the plans are. All I have is like, experience going through transitions going back to 2000, sort of the Clinton to Bush transition. And then three, I mean, it's hard, this isn't like a roundtable setup, but if folks have questions that they want to ask while I'm talking, by all means, you don't have to wait until the end. And with that, this is a slightly modified version of a presentation that we sort of gave to kind of OMB staff over the next, over the last several weeks. So we'll go with it. And can someone tell me how I switch the slides? Here we go. Okay. Okay. This is what we've been telling anyone sort of at OMB and other folks that we've talked to when it comes to transition. The upcoming transition is going to be different and the same. I guess like the one thing to really sort of, I feel like you should sort of keep in mind when it comes to the transition is like, the transition is I mean, it's important for the whole federal government to kind of navigate through a presidential transition. I feel like it's sort of particularly important when it comes to like budget, kind of those of you who work on the federal budget process in OMB and in agency budget offices. Transitions are all different, including this one, right? Like, and there's sort of two things that are sort of true at the same time. One, our transitions are a routine process that happens every 4 to 8 years. There's like a lot of muscle memory for those of you who've kind of worked in transitions before about kind of what to expect and what it looks like. But also, there's transitions are always sort of new and sort of interesting. And we had sort of new questions and issues to work through because of sort of the, President Biden's decision to withdraw from the race relatively late. That kind of throws a new sort of known wrinkle into sort of the transition process this year, on top of like kind of the usual, I guess we'd say, sort of unknowns when it comes to the transition. What do I mean by that? In a normal transition preparation, and you will have probably sort of seen this and noted this if you work in agency budget offices. Sort of the first key question is like, is the president running for re-election? If the answer is yes, it's kind of business as usual. Budget season is on a normal schedule. OMB issues spring guidance to agencies, usually in the spring. Agency budget offices are developing a budget. I'm glad that Phil and Mark appreciated that. Agencies are preparing a budget submission to give to OMB in September. That's what happens in a normal budget year, and that's what happens when a president is sort of running for re-election, because you're kind of working on sort of a path, assuming the president would be re-elected, and then kind of working on transition on the side. Track two, if the president is not running for re-election, what usually happens is OMB does not issue spring guidance to the agencies. The administration begins kind of wrap up activities as they're sort of, kind of documenting their legacy and finishing issues. And, those of you who work on kind of the budget, the federal budget and sort of agency budgets, you have a relatively kind of quiet summer, and in OMB's case, the fall, right? Because you're not receiving a budget submission, you're not handling a budget submission. This year, we were on track one for, through much of the summer. Right, the current president was running for re-election. So as you know, if you work on the budget, we submitted we issued spring guidance to agencies, and you started preparing the budget submission. Then the president sort of withdrew from the race. We were then sort of immediately on to sort of track two. And from like OMB's sort of perspective here, it was a weird place to be, because we knew, the President Biden sort of withdrew from the election. I can't remember the exact date, but it was like late July. And we were in this kind of, unsettled position of, well, what do we do? Do we tell agencies are still working on a budget submission? Do they continue to work on the budget submission? Or do we tell them to sort of stop the presses and put on the brakes and not finish the budget that they're, 2/3 or 3/4 of the way through? We decided to, kind of continue, ask agencies to continue to sort of prepare their budget submissions to submit to OMB in September. Not obviously because President Biden would sort of win, but because we felt like no matter who would have won the election, having kind of the base information that is included in agency budget submissions and all the detail that you provide in those submissions would be sort of helpful, for the transition, because OMB sort of needs sort of a starting point in order to kind of engage on and to prepare the 26 budget. So it was not, I assure you, it was not wasted work. It was not, work that's not going to be considered. It's going to be sort of the starting point that OMB is, and frankly, agencies are going to use as we're trying to put together the 26 budget. So I want to talk a little bit about sort of the budget, kind of what the budget process and what happens during a transition. First, before 1990, the outgoing administration sort of released a budget request as one of the last things out the door, right? So like the budget, before 1990, the budget release date was in January as opposed to, the first Monday in February, which meant you had a president, within like, their last sort of 3 weeks sort of in office, sort of submitting a budget request and being done. And a lot of the budget process kind of looked relatively normal. The new administration would often kind of like, going from Reagan to Bush, for instance, they would sometimes like put out sort of like a revision of the estimates and sort of an articulation of their priorities. But a lot of our work, sort of the meat of the budget, was relatively, the same as it would be sort of any other year. It also meant that like, if you worked in budget offices and you worked on the budget, like, your ability to take time off in late December around the holidays was almost nil, because you were literally like, close to like the budget actually going to print. After 1990, the budget transmittal date switched from January to February, and the outgoing administrations did not release a budget. The budget is the responsibility for the incoming administration. And then since 1990, what incoming administrations have done so far, all of them, since then, is they published a blueprint or outline of their budget in February or March, and then they sort of followed up with a full budget in April or May. The Biden administration was a slight exception. It was a letter to Congress rather than a budget blueprint, but it was effectively the same thing. If you think about it, president's inaugurated on January 20th. In a normal year, the executive branch has challenges actually getting a budget out on time. Obviously, you can't get one done from like between January 20th and early February. But there is still an interest for the incoming administration to want to kind of, articulate sort of their budget priorities and getting something out there, as they're beginning to engage with Congress on the budget and other issues. This chart is pretty hard to see, but just kind of shows sort of the history of sort of the blueprint and sort of other deadlines. What you can kind of see here if you look at the submission of broad outline and submission of budget sort of deadlines here, they're all, the broad outline, the blueprints, all like around the February or sort of March timeframe, and the budget's all around the April sort of May timeframe. What we have seen, kind of from administration to administration, is like the blueprint is taking a little bit longer to get out, and the full budget is taking longer to get out, right? So you had, the Bush administration in 2001 got the full budget out in early April. The incoming sort of Biden administration, it took to almost all the way until Memorial Day. Do I know what's going to play out this year? Obviously not. Based on sort of like this past history, I would expect the blueprint's probably going to be sometime around sort of mid-March, and the full budget's going to be sometime kind of mid to late May. Again, I haven't talked to the administration, don't know, but that would be my best guess. Little illustration of sort of the different sort of budget blueprints and kind of what was released. Usually, when the budget blueprint is sort of developed, couple things. One, it is, usually like a sort of slim sort of volume sort of produced by OMB, maybe, I don't know, somewhere between like 70 and 150 pages, right? Which is, it's a fraction of kind of like what is usually produced to support the president's budget request. And kind of on the agency sort of piece of the blueprint, usually it's like a press release or something kind of high level sort of articulating kind of the sort of the budget priorities of the administration. So this is not detailed appropriations language. This is not CJs. This is not a lot of kind of like the meat of the budget request, which comes later. This kind of is going over sort of some of that too. The blueprint that gets released, usually what it will sort of contain and what it will sort of encompass is some like high level articulation of sort of the budget priorities of the administration. What that might mean for a particular agency is, it may include like an agency top line for discretionary spending, right? And then sort of priorities and, and sort of highlights within that top line. It's not going to include object class detail. It's not going to include kind of account by account sort of the budget request. It's not going to include a lot of kind of sort of the real details that are within an agency budget. And frankly, in a lot of cases, those details haven't even sort of been fleshed out. We have, at the point of the blueprint, sort of the administration sort of articulated, like, this is the overall sort of defense and non-defense discretionary spending that we want to propose. Here's sort of our best estimate for how, kind of how much each agency would get within those totals. And then sort of here's major moving pieces within those totals. All those details then get sort of fleshed out kind of afterwards, and then are reflected in the full budget request. A key question that I think we're going to sort of face when it comes to this blueprint is the scope. Sort of normally, or up until like through the Obama transition, the blueprint was a high-level picture of the entire president's budget request: discretionary, mandatory, receipts. And it had sort of an overall sort of fiscal picture, deficit targets or surplus targets or whatever, and sort of the overall piece. In the first Trump transition and in the Biden transition, a decision was made to only focus on kind of discretionary spending in the budget blueprint. So all the big sort of mandatory and revenues questions were sort of put to the side, and it was only including sort of like the discretionary scope. This was, it was for various reasons. One, it was, it's easier to just focus on the discretionary piece and get something out the door, especially if like the questions about like kind of mandatory and receipt spending policy are particularly difficult. And also, there was sort of a question of like, we don't want kind of the overall budget picture to kind of get in the way of what Congress may be doing when it comes to like the macro sort of budget kind of questions, a reconciliation, sort of other sort of major legislation affecting mandatory spending. What this, what the incoming administration does, stay tuned. We'll know more soon. '26 budget season, what to keep in mind. First, as many of you know, sort of work on the 2026 budget is already sort of underway. PY, prior year, past year, is already sort of actually been sort of done and locked, and sort of that work has happened. And then sort of one piece of sort of the budget process that we're working on now, which a lot of you, we're and stay tuned for more details on this, is sort of the development of kind of the budget baseline. Right. So one of the sort of big steps that, OMB coordinates that sort of every agency is involved in is sort of developing kind of the overall sort of budget baseline that they're inheriting and the overall sort of fiscal picture that the incoming administration is grappling with. And I feel like there's a couple different things that sort of happen when we kind of give the incoming administration their baseline. One is it's a bit sobering, right? Like it's easy kind of as a candidate, as a campaign to be sort of proposing X, Y, or Z. When you're sort of grappling with the actual sort of numbers, it's more difficult, achieving balance over X years or kind of whatever sort of overall sort of budget fiscal targets, it's a little bit more difficult. I think the other piece of it is, as you may know, kind of the budget baseline is a combination of kind of, technical sort of assumptions for, for programs, cost of the student loan programs, cost of Medicare and Medicaid, sort of cost of Social Security, sort of, based on, sort of agency estimates based on technical assumptions, and reflecting kind of economic assumptions that the agencies receive from OMB. Incoming administrations will often kind of revisit and want to take a closer look at kind of the economic assumptions that the outgoing administration supplied to agencies. So please work with us. Economic assumptions, I can't give you an exact date, but I can say that they're coming soon. We're going to be sort of asking agencies in the coming weeks to sort of develop a budget baseline. There may be another rerun at said baseline once the incoming administration has looked at the economic assumptions. I just don't know. Two, agencies are not going to submit a new budget request to OMB. We received your budget submission in September. It's a, I believe OMB Staff have, in many cases, I think, engaged with agencies to kind of get other sort of baseline and programmatic information. But like we're not, and it never happens in a transition. We're not going to be sort of soliciting agencies for another budget request to kind of start the process again. The next sort of stage in between OMB and agencies is OMB providing something back to the agencies. 3, probably obvious, but just to kind of lean in on that, any sort of OMB passback is not going to happen until after the transition. I mean, an open question that we have is, are we, OMB, going to be engaging with the transition team on the budget before January 20th? Or is most or all of that engagement going to happen kind of after January 20th, after the transition? We're full board working for the incoming administration. We just don't know at that point. I mean, if we're engaging with the transition team in early January or late December, an OMB pass back to agencies is going to be, it'd be coming late January, early February. If we're not talking until the 20th, that pushes any pass back likely into February. And again, I'm throwing these dates out here. These are all, again, sort of speculation, but that would be sort of my best guess. 3, budget season, and you saw those dates up there before, is likely to go sort of far into the spring. This is, usually, when you work on the budget, February or March, the budget submission's done, you can sort of move on from that, and you can kind of focus on like whatever, what comes next or taking a break. This is likely to be sort of a slower burn where we're developing the 26 budget request is likely to go into at least April, if not May. It probably won't be the same level as intensity as sort of like in a budget season. It's going to be sort of, there'll be kind of peaks and valleys. But, if you're planning your life or planning your vacations or anything else, I think, we would expect that it's likely to go into April or May. And then one reality of this is an extended 2026 budget season will likely lead to delays in 27 budget preparation in some of those stages. In a transition year, we put the budget out, it's May. At OMB, we wait for, okay, who's going to be the first agency that asks, when are we getting spring guidance for next year? And it's like, we just got the budget out. Can we please have a few week break? But it's hard. If you get the budget out in May, it's hard to then get kind of policy level engagement and sort of attention and kind of a focus on like, getting the next year's spring guidance out. So can't predict anything, but I think if any year it's, we should expect a early summer guidance as opposed to spring guidance. I would expect that would be happening this coming year. Yes.
Hi, Doug
Yeah.
One question.
Sure.
So how would the CR play to affect this
It's third bullet on the next slide. I can sort of take that one on, let me take that one on and then go to the next pieces here. So there's one outstanding question when it comes to 2026 budget preparation is what happens with 25 appropriations, right? 25 appropriations could get wrapped up in December, right, in this calendar year. The advantage to that for the incoming administration would be, they can come in with a clean slate and they don't have to kind of deal with kind of like 25, wrapping up the 25 budget before they sort of move on to kind of the legislative agenda next year. On the other hand, there may still be kind of like challenges for Congress to kind of wrap up sort of 25 appropriations over the next 6 weeks or so. I think there's a question of kind of what the speaker could probably get a vote on within the House. I think there's a question on if or whether the Congress is going to sort of consider sort of legislation to provide funding for in response to sort of the multitude of disasters over the last year, including the recent hurricanes, and just kind of like how much time and attention can Congress take in December, and can they finish up appropriations? If we have a continuing resolution, if the appropriations get wrapped up in December, great, we have a baseline for the budget to work off of in 26. If not, then we kind of also sort of face face a few different questions. One, does the Trump administration want to wait until 25 appropriations are done until they kind of work on their 26 budget request? Or do they want to move forward with their 26 budget request and just make an assumption for where 25 lands? That's a question. Two is, kind of what would sort of that assumption be, and how proactive does the Trump administration want to be on negotiating or engaging with Congress on where 25 appropriations land? Hard to say. I mean, I think it would be, I think usually any executive branch doesn't want to be, if it's clear that the CR is going to get wrapped up in January or February, that's one thing. But if it looks like it's going to be sort of on hold indefinitely, usually an executive branch does not want to be sort of just waiting forever for their kind of budget request. They will, the budget will probably include an assumption for kind of the current year for appropriations, and we'd move forward with that. Happy to sort of talk more about that. Other kind of questions. One of the challenges when it comes to sort of pass back and sort of the normal sort of budget back and forth process is kind of like is when OMB, but actually more so like when agencies are staffed up, right? Like, if OMB is ready to pass back, let's say in late January, early February, are there policy officials at the agency to receive said pass back, right? Do you have a deputy secretary? Do you have an assistant secretary for budget, right? Like, are sort of agency policy officials sort of staffed up in a capacity to kind of like receive and engage on the sort of the budget submission? If so, that's great. We can actually have the normal sort of policy deliberation on the agency budget request. If not, it's harder. Often, like what OMB ends up sort of passing back, like, is more likely to stick, frankly. The second piece here, and this is true with sort of any budget, but I just want to kind of like highlight this when it comes to sort of this budget request is, president's budget requests sort of, and all the proposals within the president's budget request kind of fall within a continuum of like, is this an aspirational budget that reflects what the administration wishes it could have, and is, sort of how they see what the world should look like? Or is it a legislative blueprint where, these are, this is in detail what the administration wants, and is looking to sort of engage with Congress in order to try to get enacted into law? Any budget request is going to be sort of somewhere along that continuum, right? And any budget request is going to include proposals that are sort of on both of those levels of that continuum, right? Like, if folks that have worked on kind of budget requests in the president's budget for years know that, the budget will sometimes include proposals that no one really expects are going to get enacted into law. And then, as well as sort of proposals that, look, getting X done is absolutely going to be a priority of the administration to have happen. So obviously, I don't know what budget policies are going to fall where when it comes to sort of the incoming administration, but I would just sort of keep that in mind when you're sort of looking at the president's budget request when it comes out. We talked about appropriations. I mean, I think one of the other challenges here when it comes to kind of like if we are working under a continuing resolution is appropriations language that is also part of the budget request. I mean, this is a big piece that OMB and agencies work on. It's a huge amount of work. There's a lot of sort of policy questions involved here. If the budget is, building, proposing appropriations language that builds off of enacted sort of an enacted bill is harder, but is also more responsive because it actually means that you're sort of engaging on sort of specific sort of provisions or sort of a language that's included in the appropriations bill, and the administration has to take a definitive sort of take on that language in the budget. If it looks like the Congress is not going to pass a CR in time to, reflect in the budget, then, it's easier to kind of write kind of like legislative language to reflect the budget's priorities, but, it's not often, reactive or responsive to like what Congress actually enacts in their appropriations bill. And I feel like agencies, you're sort of in a tough point when that happens, because what your appropriations committee will do as soon as appropriations are enacted is they'll say, can you please mark up our enacted appropriations language to reflect the budget request, which is a huge, sort of workload that happens sort of after the budget comes out. The last thing is kind of what is going to happen with sort of other major sort of looming issues that Congress and the incoming administration are going to have to sort of grapple with, and how does that interact with the formulation of the 26 budget. The first is the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling was suspended till early January. By next May or so, Congress and the administration will need to sort of engage, do something when it comes to the debt ceiling, either raise the debt ceiling or defer the debt ceiling or something else. Does this, play into kind of any sort of like negotiation or, deliberation between the administration and Congress, or does everyone just kind of hold their nose and increase the debt ceiling? I don't know, but that's going to be one sort of looming question. Again, it's going to the debt ceiling is going to kind of be reset in January, and then sort of certain steps can take until something really, before it gets serious, and that's likely to be April or May. The second is the discretionary budget caps expire after 2025. Right, so there were spending caps on defense and non-defense spending for about 10 years. And then there was none for about 3 years. And then, in 24 and 25, as part of the last negotiations between the Biden administration and Congress over the debt ceiling, budget caps were reinstated again. 26, we don't have them. Is the incoming administration going to propose budget caps? Is Congress going to want to entertain budget caps? Is it going to be the same budget caps as before? Probably. But there's the kind of these sort of open questions are going to be sort of like part of the negotiation with Congress, and part of it's going to be sort of considered legislatively this coming year. And the third is budget reconciliation, right? So budget reconciliation is like spending legislation that Congress can enact with a sort of simple majority in the Senate. There's some limitations on what you can do through reconciliation or not, which is its own multi-day seminar, and I only know some of, but generally, there's a, I think if the House, Senate, President are all Republican, I think reconciliation is likely to be on the agenda for this coming year. That's not to say it's definitely going to be enacted, but it would be likely a tool to be used. And I think there's sort of a question about what would be included there, kind of on the tax side and on the spending side. Related to that, TCJA, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, sort of the tax cut that was enacted, in the first Trump administration. A lot of those provisions expire at the end of this calendar year. So taxes will absolutely be sort of on the agenda, how to deal with sort of that looming expiration. What else is on the agenda, we'll have to wait and see. This is just very quick, but quick do's and don'ts sort of as you're sort of thinking about a transition. Don't assume what the transition is going to be like. There's going to be challenges and opportunities you just can't anticipate. Every single sort of transition I've gone through, there's been sort of elements of it that have been sort of complete surprise. One, obviously, don't prioritize your own policy preferences over the outgoing or incoming administrations. you're sort of in a weird position when you work in agency budget offices where you're going to be sort of working to help the outgoing Biden administration sort of, kind of on closing things out and reflecting their priorities, and then sort of flipping when it comes to sort of January 20th, and then sort of helping the incoming Trump administration. It's hard to be kind of like working sort of on from that, flipping, where obviously the policy priorities are very different, but that's sort of the nature of our jobs. And the third, this is I don't think there's too much here to worry about, but obviously you don't freelance with the transition team or people who claim to be helping with the transition team, right? Like agency transition teams are getting set up for various reasons not worth going into here. There hasn't been like active sort of, conversations between, agency career staff who are sort of managing the transition and the incoming Trump administration's transition team. But, there's a very, legally, set by statute, set by sort of norms, sort of like policies and procedures for how, career staff engage with an incoming transition team. And I would just kind of look for sort of your agency's sort of transition team sort of leadership to kind of define that. Dues, obviously sort of get up to date on kind of the current services and sort of like the programmatic issues within sort of the programs and issues you work on. Obviously be kind of aware of kind of the campaign proposals that are relevant to your programs, and look for your agency leadership, look for your agency sort of transition team, kind of for sort of questions and for help on kind of how to navigate through the transition. I mean, I feel like unique when it comes to kind of folks that work on sort of the budget when it comes to transition is, a lot of what you're doing is, it's providing your sort of new policy officials kind of the hard trade-offs that they need to make and they need to consider when they're sort of developing their budget request. It's very easy on the outside or kind of at 10,000 feet to be saying X should happen and Y should happen. It's much harder, and at least it requires more thought when you're sort of faced with like the real sort of policy choices involved. And it's a hard job, but it's also kind of a place again where like this is where sort of agency budget offices are, play a very important role and get to step up. And with that, I'm going to grab my coffee, but if folks have questions. Yeah. I'm sorry, what counts as discretionary versus mandatory? I mean, it's discretionary spending generally is sort of the spending that is sort of subject to sort of annual appropriations, right? So like it requires sort of funding. It's usually sort of operational costs for agencies, a lot of like kind of the sort of grants to state and local governments, the Department of Defense's budget almost exclusively. And again, there's sort of everything I say here, there's an exception, but it's generally like the non-entitlement spending, right? So, mandatory spending would be Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, sort of that spending in those programs that sort of continue every year and don't require sort of an annual appropriation. Other questions? Yeah. I wasn't working on the budget in 1990. I believe. So this is my understanding. So there was in 1990, there was the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. There was a big sort of like budget sort of deal between the administration and with Congress. This is the one where, going back to George H.W. Bush, read my lips, no new taxes. He reached a budget deal with the Congress that included taxes as well as sort of spending constraint. I believe, and if somebody else here in this room can kind of correct me if I'm wrong, I believe kind of like the change in the budget transmittal date was rolled into that legislation. Good, I feel good. Yeah. Good. No, but I can sort of hear you. Yeah, be loud. Good.
So I know that I see the due for research campaign proposals. My question,
Mhm.
in my experience over the last president's budget, where we focused a lot more on return on investment,
Yep.
are there any other gems that you would provide us that we should think about to be proactive as we wait for additional guidance?
Huh. Return on investment. I mean, I think, sorry, you just hopped back and hopped forth. I mean, I think that I would also look at, I mean, there's going to be some sort of budget priorities and sort of issues that are absolutely going to be sort of real, no matter kind of like, regardless of the policy priorities of the incoming administration. Cybersecurity is obviously going to be an issue. AI is going to be an issue. Right, like government efficiency would be an issue. I mean, I think it's always good and important to kind of look at, is there information on kind of the programs and issues you work at when it, like, evidence or sort of good evaluations about the relative effectiveness of sort of different federal programs. That's not going to necessarily kind of drive the decisions, but at least it's sort of the information that you should be, that's helpful and that's available. Return on investment when it comes to, like, for instance, sort of, budgetary savings, investing in X, in these sort of S&E costs are going to, could increase enforcement, which could translate into budget savings. Those will definitely resonate. Again, it's not going to be sort of definitive, right? Like there's more money was given to the IRS, in the last few years that, where sort of budgeteers, CBO and us have sort of scored as being like, this should result in higher revenues and basically budget savings. Does that mean it's off the table as, from being cut? No, definitely not, but at least it's sort of good information to have. No problem. Yeah. Yep. Huh. I believe the OMB budget hearings are after the blueprint comes out. And then the agency detailed budget hearings would happen sort of like after sort of the more detailed budget. I am blanking on this question right now. I believe that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. Like you'll have the OMB director sort of come out on, right again, sort of after the blueprint. And then when there's actually details, then the appropriators will want to schedule hearings with agency cabinet secretaries. Also, frankly, at that point, most cabinet secretaries will actually have been sort of like confirmed. But if I'm wrong, I apologize. Yep. Yes. I think it's not likely we're going to have a sequester in 2020. I mean, my best guess is that the appropriators would appropriate funding within sort of the discretionary spending caps rather than kind of knowingly sort of appropriate over those caps in order to trigger a sequester. So that would be, I mean, anything could happen, but sort of that would be sort of my best guess. Usually, yeah, I mean, the appropriators want to have kind of their own sort of ability to kind of control where sort of spending goes, not to like have everything sort of subject to a sequester. But this is, again, speculation. Any other questions? It's good to see. It's great to see everyone. It's great to come. If you have questions, let us know. I know, like, at this stage, there's going to be sort of different sort of moments of kind of awkward silence where you're waiting from OMB on, like, can you please tell us what the budget schedule is? Can you please tell us kind of what's sort of coming next? Can you please, is passed back today, or is it next week, or is it next month? I'm trying to like plan my life here. We, try to sort of provide sort of the information even on like the timing and the schedule and what comes next sort of as quickly and as soon as we can. I think usually when sort of silence is sort of coming from OMB on these sort of big questions, it's because they haven't been answered yet. So, it's going to be an interesting several months. I think it's going to be sort of unpredictable on the timing in many cases, but we will share what we can when we can. Thank you. No problem, no problem.
All right. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. The agenda, we're finished just a little bit early, so it gives us more opportunity to network and engage with one another. So a couple of reminders, just housekeeping. Those that came in, just want to make sure that you checked in and received your badge as well as your Money Talks game and envelope instructions. So check with a volunteer to my right behind this pillar, and they will give you your envelope and instructions to engage in the game. Just a reminder, money talks, all right? So I hope money is talking, right? We are going to re-engage in our mini networking, so feel free to exchange your budget line of business bucks. To set the tone, there are a couple of questions on there, starter questions to get to know one another. If not, feel free to ask the questions that are best of interest to you. We just try to engage. The idea here is to network and to connect with one another in the community. So at the end of the day, you should have 4 budget line of business bucks, but not your own, right? So the exchange is with your colleagues here in the room. For those that are overachievers, you can check with a volunteer and they will give you another envelope so that way you can increase your dollar value. At the end of the day, whoever has the largest dollar value will be the prize winner for this event. So good luck. Keep talking, keep networking. And just a reminder, restrooms, ladies' restroom is to the far left, right here before the glass doors. Male restroom is to the right. And also take a look at the social hour. You can take pictures. There's some food there. Some of the vendors are there as well. So if you have questions about USDA Connect, we're going to do a demo starting at 11:15. Also, there are some refreshments in there. So feel free, take as many as you like. There's plenty to go around. You can take some home to your family. Um, and feel free to enjoy and engage. If you have questions of any of the PMO, feel free, ask us. The volunteers are available as well. But thank you all again, and we'll get started again at 11:15. All right, thanks.
On.
Testing.
Hello, everyone. We're going to get started in about a minute or two. So, you can just keep talking, and then in a couple minutes, we'll get started. Hello, everyone. Good morning still. How is everyone doing so far? Good? All right, good to hear. So to lead into our next session, just wanted to ask a couple of questions, see some hands raised for these. Who here uses the QFR system? Okay, there we go. Who here would be interested in using the QFR system? You're going to learn soon. You will learn soon. All right, no, that's great to see. So to segue in, great to know because we'll be leading into our next session, the USDA technology demo, questions for the record with the Department of Commerce. So please help me welcome to the stage. We already have on stage Allison Fox and Jamaica St. Louis, and we will also welcome to the stage Dane Engler. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Allison Fox, and I'm the program support lead for Connect.gov. So I spend most of my time with all of the partners, talking to them about whether they're in Confluence and Connect or whether they need new tools. And especially for the budget line of business, I work pretty much hand in hand with Dane every day to help bring better technology to the budget offices of the federal government.
I'm Jamaica St. Louis, so I am at the Department of Commerce, Office of Secretary, Office of Budget. We get questions for the record every year, so we were the first office to work with Allison and Dane to launch the new QFR platform and just go through the whole process.
Alrighty, and my name is Dane Engler. I'm a lead software developer here at USDA on this contract. And this year we worked with DOC to build out this tool. I'm basically just I don't want to say a jack of all trades, but do kind of front end stuff, work with clients, and also do actual software development. So thank you all for coming today. We're going to go to Allison to talk about what QFRs are.
Sure. So does anyone know what QFRs are? Questions for the record? You all do. Okay, very good. All right, so I don't have to tell you about that. So there was formerly a QFR tool in max.gov. It did not migrate over. And so there was one sort of somewhat built, and we looked at it and we decided to start over. So we were really happy to have the Department of Commerce come in as our first client. We worked very diligently. We met every week over 2 or 3 months, pretty much. And they went live in June and with their Senate questions, and they are now almost finished up with their House questions.
All righty. So for this time block today, we're going to be looking at the QFR system that we built out. We're going to look through some slides first to kind of talk about the overarching kind of generic purposes of what the tool is for, how it's basically used. And then with time, we will actually do a live demo, and we're going to try to run through some things really fast. So the next thing we're going to really talk about is the actual cycle creation. So for QFRs, you're either, in our case, we're dealing with the House or the Senate, and then the fiscal year, obviously. And so we have many ways in which they can kind of create these cycles, one of which is the bulk creation, where we help the client basically create a flat file that we'll look at, where they can go and upload that and bulk create kind of the structure and outline of what those QFRs are going to be for your individual representatives, and then however many questions they have then. Let's see here. The other way we have is the ad hoc way, and that's, so say you need a new QFR cycle and it's ad hoc with your current one, you can create one mid-cycle. And so what we're going to see here up above is the bulk creation screen. And what you're looking at is that you can name your cycle, you give your fiscal year, your type, and add notes if needed. But the key here is, and can you see, my mouse doesn't show up on the screen there, but you see this big square block here, and it has member name, hearing date, POC, description, question ID, assignee. Obviously, all of this data, once entered in a flat format, will be able to upload into our tool. And this will allow for automation. And so I know the client has used it, DOC. I don't know if you want to elaborate on you guys using.
Yeah, so what we did is that we take every QFR, every question that we get, and put it in a Excel file. You make sure that you have all of the headings that he mentioned, and then you turn that into a CSV file. You're able to upload it into the system, and then it creates it's a mechanism to answer to each question. It creates like its own, like each question gets its own little box. You have all the information on the question, the background, because of how you created the flat file. And then it's also like a Word document. So we see track changes, we see all the comments, and you get all of that just from creating a Word Excel file of all of your QFR questions.
Yep. And so, like I mentioned, that was the main way that you can create your QFR cycle. It's definitely easier doing that, so it's already pre-populated. But if you have to, we do have the ability to kind of create that out of cycle ad hoc cycle. Now we're actually going to look at actually working with the data. Question? Yeah? I do think the budget line of business is going to put these slides somewhere then. Yep, yep. And I think this is also being recorded, so they'll host this recording somewhere as well. All righty. Now let's look at the QFR member questions. So this would be, you have your indicated representative, and now I know it's hard to see, it's a little small, but we're going to demo this then, and we will be able to see it a little bit bigger. But what you're looking at is basically the relevant information about that representative, the actual file that will be used for assembly. It's more for tagging, and we'll get into that later. But the key thing is, it's this one-stop shop screen where the admin or the main point of contact for your agency would be working. This is not your end user. We'll get to that end user then, but this would be the main user kind of doling out those questions, indicating who has to do the work, and then tagging your document accordingly with the relevant questions and answers coming from other SharePoint documents. So now we're going to look at the user experience. and this is where kind of like the end user would be. A lot of their data is in the read-only status, so really they're just there to see information. But then they have their iframe with the Word doc, which is where they are actually entering their response. They're able to see the question information above so that they can see what they're actually responding to, as well as relevant background information. The other thing to note here, and we'll get into this though, is there is a edit in Word button here. It's very hard to see on the screen there, but we'll get into it later. But basically that allows you to directly open the file in your Word environment, which allows you to have better access to what our client was saying here about the track changes and more advanced functionality that's inside of Word that isn't as accessible through the native kind of Word Online experience. So, alrighty, the next piece we're going to talk about is the document assemble. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of this tool. There are 2 sections in which we do doc assembly, technically 3 actually. But doc assembly, if you're not familiar with it, is basically the ability to kind of mush together multiple SharePoint files into a final end document for a user or to give to, say, Congress. But in our environment, we have a representative with all of their questions, and so we need to assemble that. So the first round of assembly is really the question, answer, response pairs for that representative. And so they could have 10, they could have 15, obviously it's however many you need, and then all of that will be assembled. Once that's finished being assembled, then you need to assemble all the representatives' documents together into that final document that you're going to be giving to Congress or whoever that end document needs to go to. This is very critical and useful because we can kind of generate previews and also run this multiple times. So the end user can actually generate multiple publications, see how it looks, tweak it as needed, and then get that end final result, right? That will then get amalgamated into all the representatives, right? So, and we're going to look at all this then. I know, and again, please raise your hand and ask questions if you feel like I'm moving too fast or you're interested in something. The last thing on slides we're going to look at right here is the admin page. And basically what you're looking at is some configuration that we've allowed the admins of the DOC admins to have access to. This being the representative list, permissioning, and we've also added this round, the ability to send out emails to individual emails. This is useful more so than groups because when it goes to OMB, there might be just a few OMB staff that you really need to send this thing to and not a wide range of folks. So I know that's been critical. And then the assignee list, which is a list of the components or bureaus that you're going to be assigning this stuff out to then. That also relates then to your permissioning. So then whoever has that for, say, DHS or HUD or whatever agency, right, who's going to have access when it's in that bureau review stage. Let's see here. Something else to note, DOC hasn't used it yet, but we do have the ability to have multiple bureaus work on the same file. So basically share and work together, collaborate on one response. It hasn't been used yet, but we do have that ability. So I just want to highlight that. Next, we're going to now go into the actual demo. So
Looks like we have a question.
Go ahead with the question. That would be the interaction with like our clients and figuring out who on their staff needs to have those admin roles. And then we work with max.gov to build out groups and then assign those emails to those groups. So that's how we do that.
Right, so I would say, I guess it depends on your agency. At Commerce, we control the QFR process, but it does go through our ledge folks. So whoever needs to have access to Max, Connect, or whatever, they can come in and review our final responses. But just at Commerce, Office of Budget leads that charge.
All righty. Any other questions before we go into the demo? All righty. So as you guys can see here, we have the main cycle dashboard list. And you can see that we have this questions for the record demo in here. And then there's some actual DOC QFRs in here. What I'm going to quickly show is the bulk QFR page, just so you guys can see it. Again, this is where I was talking about you're going to upload a flat file of all the relevant information, and then the system is actually going to bulk create all that data for you in a timely manner. So the next piece I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go into our cycle. We have some test representatives in here, but we're going to go actually and go out and create a new representative. Now, when I created this cycle, it was already set for the Senate. So as you can see, the Senate is pre-populated. We can go ahead here and find a senator. And then this is where, and if we have time, I'll try to show the ad hoc. But basically, what we've done for this is most of the time, representatives have 10 or less questions, most of the time, not always. And so we've added kind of like a template system. So basically, if you already know how many questions you're going to have, the system's going to preload in your tags and create the issues that you're going to need for that many questions. So in this example, we're going to say we have 2 questions. The hearing date, I don't know, is kind of a week from now. Our POC is, let's just say it's me. And our description is just a very short description. All right, I'm going to add this document. And then once we're done creating here, it is copying SharePoint files as well. So there is a lot of kind of special stuff going on in the background. As you can see, we're loaded in here. And then it's going to take Word Online a second here to load. But it will in due time. There it is. It's very happy. And so as you can see, we indicated 2 questions, and we have our 2 tags already pre-populated in there for us. So technically, if we don't change the question ID value over here, we won't have an issue. We can basically just generate our tool. Now, if you do change the question ID, you can easily do that as well, though. So what's going to happen is on the first time when you do this creation, obviously, if you do the bulk creation, a lot of this work is pre-done and pre-populated, so you actually don't have to deal with this. But because I'm adding this ad hoc, what's going to happen is when I double-click on one of these, it's actually going to prompt me because I haven't given it a question yet. So basically what's happening is it's saying, hey, you got this question 1. You haven't given us a question yet, so you got to do that before you move on. So I'm going to ask, what is a cat? That is my question. I got no background for you. Sorry. And I need this due. I really need this due yesterday, but let's say Thursday. I'll give you some time. And then so this is where you choose then your assignments. This is where you choose who's actually going to get the work and who's going to be doled out that work. And so I'm going to scroll down. I choose the Budget LoB for testing. I'm going to go hit update here. We're going to update. There we go. Our data's updated there. All right, we're going to go do our next one. And then I'm going to call this one cost of cat question mark, because we could say for FY 2022, 2023. We love our FYs. All righty. So we're going to get those in there, and we're going to say we're looking for that budget information. I have none. Sorry. And I'm going to say I really need this due tomorrow. This is really due soon. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and update that. Now what we've done is basically just kind of pre-populated our information with questions. And now if I was doing this ad hoc, what I would need to do is come in here. And now we see that there's nothing here yet. We just have our base information and that's it. There's nothing on the page. What you must understand is that it hasn't gone to the bureau yet. It's just been